Hello and welcome, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the top 10 most brilliant archetypes. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So in at number 10 I've decided to put the Mantis, and I really do love this as a creature. This is just a go-to one for me when I think of gathering, and for its insane ability, which everyone knows really that no other arc creature has apart from the Mantis. I really think it is brilliant. It's innovative in its design. It has been in the game for absolutely ages. It's sort of insane that no one really talks about this creature more, as I find this is a really useful and effective one. I love this just as a general creature, and I love all of its abilities. Obviously its main one being the fact that it can just wield melee weapons. I'm pretty sure that's really its only one, so I don't know why I was going for plurals there, but you know, hey ho, we'll go along with it, shall we? Yes, that is just an ability which you don't see on other creatures, and it makes it a very versatile killing creature and also gathering mount too, and they're both very nice things to have, especially within the same creature. That is especially nice of them to have, because you know, it just adds to the sort of atmosphere and ambience of the creature and just makes them even more brilliant. Next up, I've decided to put the Argentavis, as I really just love this as a flying creature, and it has done a heck of a lot for me when it comes to just my arc playing in general. It's actually sort of insane what I've managed to get out of the Argy. It is one of those creatures where I'm like, if this was not in the game, I do not know where I would be right now. It has just done so much for me as a flying mount, as a resource to repair my armor, as a resource to pick up other creatures and do loads of farming with them, as a resource, as a sort of travel mount to get to caves and whatnot, and also to travel my baryonyx around everywhere, and also just to be such a great creature that can fly over long distances and carry metal whenever I need it to. The RG has just always been there for me, and it is just so well designed that this really is one of those creatures where I have to include it in the brilliant archetypes list. It's always been there. We all know and love this creature, and it is just truly an effective one. But is it as effective as the next creature on the list? Now, the Crystal Wyvern is just a really versatile flyer in my opinion. It's everything that the Wyvern stands for and is, but with a much easier taming method, and I think with better elemental abilities. Whether or not you think the Argentavis is best in this, that all comes down to your own personal opinion, but just considering how easy this thing is to tame and the insane versatility you get with this creature, I do simply have to put it higher. My personal favourite is the Blood Crystal Wyvern, by the way. Just love that elemental ability that it has. Comment down below your favourite Crystal Wyvern if you do have one. If not, I strongly recommend you go try one. They are on the top 10 most brilliant art creatures according to me, after all. But you know, form your own opinions. You're allowed to disagree with this list as always. You can comment down below if you feel like I haven't done a good job with this one, but I just think it's the Wyvern but better really. Yes, you need to be level 60 and you need to knock out a Wyvern to get the Primal Crystal, but it's a passive tame. And on top of that, they have the hydration buff too. If you want to stick those wings in the water a little bit, then you might be able to manage to get that hydration buff on you and do even more damage in the skies. Sorry, my hiccups are being a bit of a pain at the moment. In number 7, I've decided to put the Reaper, as this is just such a good element of game design. It really does deserve to be on the list, doesn't it? When thinking about this creature, I always think of the ambience and the atmosphere that it has on a map like of Aberration. I always tend to pronounce that wrong. I'm slowly getting better at this. I will fully get it right at some point. But yes, it is just so well built into its map, and it is just so versatile in its abilities too. It really is just a great one to have. On top of that, its taming method is one of the coolest in the game. You have to get this Reaper Queen down to less than 1,000 health, and then after that it will impregnate you, and you need to gather as much XP as possible to make sure that thing is going to be a good strong baby. Obviously gain that 100% effectiveness, which, you know, if you're going through all the effort, you probably should be entailing, unless your rates are absurdly high and you don't have the time to do it. Then it's a little bit of a cop-out really, in my opinion. But you know, you're allowed to use your own rates. I tend to be maybe 2.5x at most, like just kind of default single player settings. I don't really digress from the mean too much. Also, this creature is just like peak Arc Xenomorph moment, and is there really something that's cooler than that? The Shadowmane is one of those tames where you need to include it on a brilliant Arc tames list, at least from my perspective, this being a highlight of any Gen 2 player's life, and just actually now my Arc playing life. And before you comment down below about all of these creatures, like basically all of them not being an ASA, the Mantis and the IGR, the Reaper and the Crystal Wyvern aren't, I don't really care too much. Yes, ASC may be discontinued, but it still has a very active player base, and it's pretty much still split half and half down the middle, and I still definitely spend a lot of my time on ASE because all the content's there, and personally I just prefer it as a game. But I'm sure when all the content's out on ASA I might make the switch, and also if I can afford to not have my room being like 10 million degrees whenever I start running the game, because it is so damn demanding. Not to say Arc isn't as well, but it is significantly less demanding. If someone says, well, you do it for the looks, I play a game because I enjoy said game. Like, you could say Crisis doesn't really look too great anymore, but it's still a great game. You're still going to play it. You might want to play the remastered one though, because the performance is actually better for once. In at number 5, coming away from the Crisis conversation, that was a little bit of a very big digression from the mean, you could say, we're going to talk about the Bloodstalker, because come on, this is one of those creatures where it is so nice to have as an underwater mount. You may have not discovered this from your perspective, but just from my perspective, generally I always love this thing as an underwater mount, and I will settle for nothing less when it comes to underwater tames. Yes, the Megalodon, the Mosif, it had a little bit of TLC, and the Ichthyosaurus are great underwater mounts and you can use them, but this does everything that they do for me apart from the damage aspect, but it still can pack a fair punch. Just you wouldn't be doing the motor with it, but most of the times I'm not doing the motor, which is pretty much actually all the time. I barely even do that boss fight, and yeah, it's largely insignificant to be honest. And for everything else, this does everything I need it to. It is fast, agile, you can see the aggros of all of the creatures as well, and you can skate on the top of the water too. It is just a marvel of design in my opinion, and I love how it's integrated. It's not just also a great underwater mount, it's obviously a great general travel mount, and I really do adore it for all of its traveling abilities. It just can go really insanely fast, and you can just get a lot done with a creature like this. It is just so worth having, and if you haven't got a Bloodstalker already and you have access to tame one, you might as well already. You are wasting your time with not getting one of these things. The Desmodus is one of those creatures where you really can't forget that it is one of the most brilliant Arc tames coming out on pre-order, so a very recent one. Again, it's done on ASA, but I don't care about that. Again, I'm not going to digress from the mean too much, so I've said that 3 times in this video, so I'm not going to say it again. Talking about the Desmodus, they obviously have the Sanguine Elixir, which is an absolute cheat for tames. 30% of it done like that. All you have to do, chuck it in the inventory, press E or whatever button you want to use depending on what device you're on. Then yeah, there you go, 30% of the tame done like that. And obviously they're Bloodbag farms, and I love my Bloodstalkers. It was literally the previous creature on the list, so you bet I'm going to love this creature for all the Bloodbag gathering, not only so I can tame more Desmoduses, because it's the exact same taming method, but also so I can tame more Bloodstalkers. They are very nice flyers as well. That gliding ability is well sought after. It's nice and snarl too, but I find it's even better in the Desmodus, and they can go invisible at night too. But I think I chose the wrong biome for this, because it's one of the only that does not have a day and night cycle. In number 3, we've got the Baryonyx. This is always the king for me when it comes to any kind of caving mount, and there is no competition whatsoever. Nothing is going to change my absolute love for the Baryonyx as a brilliant Arc tame. It is fast, it is speedy, it is capable of so much as a tame, and it is a great caving mount, which is its main ability really. This thing is just the perfect size to fit into any cave, apart from the Affected Skylords, but you struggle even probably bringing a Dung Beetle in there. But you know, that's besides the point really. For everything else, you're gonna love this creature. You're not going to need to cry in between phases, and it has got a very nice health stat, and on top of that, great health, great stamina, and great mobility too. And that's something which is really needed in a cave environment. You want to be able to get out of some situations, because yes, you're going to be killing a lot of those pesky bugs down there, but you're also going to be doing quite a lot of just avoiding things in general. You're not going to be killing everything that comes full force blazing in front of you. You are going to be doing quite a bit of just running away too, because you know, it's more practical to do it that way, at least from my point of view, and it's great at doing that. It's also great for the underwater caves with that stun spin attack that can stun creatures up to the size of Megalodon. In number 2, we've got the Maywing. This is the best just travel mount out there, and I love what this stands for as a creature. It is so versatile, it is so agile, it is so easy to tame, and sort of a little bit game changing really. And all the best players are really using this thing for travel because they realize just how good it is. And I know I don't demonstrate it the best in this B-roll, especially to the environment that I'm in, but in very flat environments too, you can pick up a lot of speed and traverse the landscape with absolute ease. Yes, the rock drake can sort of do the same, but it kind of struggles a little bit more, and I'm not sure with the reasons behind it, but the Maywing is simply a better glider. The side was also unlocked at level 18 too, so there's no complaining with levels, but you probably want to be level 21, because if you get some Trankos, once you have a couple of signs, you can easily knock out one of the extremely high level ones, being whatever the highest level is on your server or world. And from that, you can just get yourself the best Maywing right off the bat. You don't need to go for low levels first. Honestly, just prepare and get a really good one. Trap it simply with those signs and trank it and you'll be fine. They also act as a portable feeding trough and glide on the top of the water. They're pretty good swimmers and they can gather berries too. And finally, in at number 1, I've decided to put the Deinonychus because, come on, this creature is one of those where you really do have to celebrate it for its brilliance, at least in my opinion. This is one of those tames where they're ridiculously easy. You simply steal their eggs from the nest, use a grappling hook or some kind of flyer to get away. You don't even need that really, you can just kamikaze yourself and pick up your body at a later date. You still get out fine, and then just use some torches and raise this thing, just feed it a little bit of meat, and as long as you're not playing on an official server, it's not going to take too long. At 2.5x, it shouldn't take more than maybe an hour or two to get one of these things fully raised, and you only need to do that twice, especially if you know you're going to be breeding these things, because that's going to be extremely useful to you for boss fights and just building a pack of these things. I wouldn't just recommend, you know, always raising them straight from scratch, where you're going to have to anyway when you're breeding, but you know what I mean. It's not going to be as much effort to get through everything. You just simply have to wait for that egg to incubate, but the egg is going to be much more easily obtained. These things have it can deal bleed damage to bosses as well, like you've seen it there on that Bronto. They can do the same thing to a boss, which is just insane, ripping them to shreds, dealing that bleed ability. They take no fall damage on top of this as well, and they can scale any kind of wall or vertical surface to have the pack buff, which is just lovely to have, especially in a boss fighting scenario, because you're going to be doing insane damage on top of that, and they really just are the most brilliant Arc Tems. I could bang on about them for ages, but I'll stop. The top 5 best Arc boss creatures. So coming in at the number 10 spot, I've decided to put the Mantis, as I find this creature is highly effective in boss scenarios. It is quite a fast, rapid creature, and also with that it can wield weapons too. It is a really valuable one for defeating the Manticore on Scorched Earth. That's definitely where I would advise it the most out of all of these. And although the tame method can be a little bit obnoxious in cases, I find it is not too bad. And there are some creatures on this list which do have much harder tame methods than this creature. Again, you're going to want to choose those weapons wisely that you use. swords and pikes are going to be your best bet. I would arguably go for pikes because the durability is higher. Maybe the damage isn't higher, but you can always get some ascendant ones on there. Do take into mind that the durability of the weapons does drop a lot faster when the mantis is wielding them compared to if you were wielding them, so don't judge it based on that. Either way, that's all the precautions for this creature to use it in a given boss scenario. Apart from also, actually, their health isn't the greatest, especially if you get some lower level ones, so be careful for that. But as long as the boss fight isn't too long, you will have a good time using mantises in that scenario. Next up, I've chosen the Carcharodontosaurus for this list, as it does pay quite a good contribution to defeating any of the extinction bosses, that being any of the titans and just the Alpha King Titan as well, the Beta King Titan, the Gamma King Titan, all of the bosses on extinction are going to be where you're going to use this creature, and it is your best bet really. Yes, you could still use Gigas, and Gigas will still be effective, but they are a lot less reliable than this creature, and let me tell you the main reason why. You probably know by now that the Giga has a blood rage, not a blood rage, sorry, a rage ability. The blood rage belongs to this creature, and essentially what that means is if it takes a certain amount of damage in a certain period of time, because it is based on the time as well, then it will take you off of its saddle and just go into full rage mode and just try and demolish everything around it. And if you're using it in a given boss scenario, it's going to be dealing quite a lot of damage quite quickly, especially considering, you know, they are the titans we're talking about. They tend to damage quite quickly, and obviously with a lot of heavy damage. They don't tend to just give small amounts of damage out over time. It tends to be quite rapid and very forceful, and sometimes the Gigas can get out of control, and it's really not going to be your best bet. Also, the more you fight with these things, the more damage they'll do until their blood rage is full. They really are just more reliable than the Giga for that reason, and that's why they're here. Now, the Megalosaurus is one of those where I find it is quite underrated, and you might actually consider the Rock Drake to be quite a good boss tame for its cheesing of the Raasclark boss fight, so brief honourable mention there, but it is not on any other spot in the list. Anyway, talking about the Megalosaurus, a bit off topic to be honest. The Megalosaurus is one of those creatures where I find it is forgotten in the given boss fighting community, and I find it is a very useful one, and maybe it would be a bit of a pain to take it to that given boss arena, because it only really works well at night time. And I'm not sure if that works on the island or in other maps like that where you're in a boss fight. Does it have a day and night? Are these things going to sleep through it? Either way, on Operation they are absolute kings of the boss fighting area, and obviously they excel in that for many reasons. They have the bleed ability, obviously. On top of that too, they are very fast, nimble, agile creatures, and this hugely attributes them to being great boss creatures. Yes, a heavy damage dealing creature is nice to have, but one which is also very mobile will give you a much higher chance of given survival in these boss fighting scenarios, and this really does. On top of that, on Operation you can use it for so many other things as well, and on other maps too. They are great versatile travelers, and they generally just pack a punch all the time you're using them. So if you tend to travel a lot in the night time, and if you feel like maybe you want to give these creatures a go for some boss fights, then sure, try it, and I think you won't be disappointed. In at number 7 we have got the Megatherium, and this creature is here because if you've ever fought the Broodmother, you will know how great these creatures are if you've used them in that boss fight, and this is just for one main reason. If they kill an insect, which in this case are the minions, or they're actually Araneos that the Broodmother spawns, but they're the minions of which the Broodmother spawns, it's going to kill those, and then it's going to get this insect buff, which essentially I think it's called like a rage buff again, something to do with that, and it's going to deal a lot more damage to the Broodmother and to all the other creatures around it as well. On top of that, as well is actually these things are going to take less damage too, which is even greater in a given boss scenario. And if you ever use on top of it as well, I actually haven't included this in the list because this is just the fighters for boss battles, although I really should give it an honorable mention, as the Yuti is one of those creatures where it gets a gold star for being a great boss creature. But this is the top 10 boss fighters list. I probably didn't make that too obvious apart from in the title, where I think in the intro I actually just said boss tames, but you know, you can read. I'm relying on you for that. Either way, yeah, very good for the Broodmother boss fight, and the Yuti deserves a little honorable mention because it still can fight, and you know, you'll want one in a boss fight. Continuing on, we have got the Theory, and the reason why this creature is here is not just because its saddle is unlocked at level 69.
Nice.
It is because this is really a great boss creature for dealing with the dragon on the island. And obviously ASA is still kind of a new thing, and a lot more people are playing on the island. Admittedly, Scorched Earth has moved a lot of players onto that, as honestly that is the best thing in my opinion ASA has to offer right now. But the Theory is that go-to for the dragon boss fight, and that is because it has an ability, the dragon, not the Theory, where the dragon is going to shoot out loads of fire, and it's going to deal tons of damage to carnivores. It actually is particularly offensive to those creatures, whereas the Theory does not fall into that category as it is not a carnivore, and it still packs a lot of punch in the damage department, has great health, great stamina, great mobility, and its weight isn't too bad as well. That doesn't really matter an awful lot in a boss fight, as long as it still is enough to maybe carry a bit of food in it, and just, you know, so you can ride it possibly. Also, that actually does come to one thing. For food, you can't just chuck meat in this thing's inventory, although it can gather it, it does not eat it. And sweet vegetable cake is your best bet to healing these things quickly, but that is quite expensive, so that's the only real downside for using Theories in a boss fighting scenario. In at number 5, we have got the Spinosaurus, and come on, when it comes to boss fights, this is another one of those underrated creatures, and I really do wish still that people use these creatures more for boss fights, because Rexes do seem to be all the rage. And although they are on this list later on, because I really do feel as if, you know, they deserve a place on the list, as they have done a lot for people in boss fights, this could possibly be seen as a potentially better one. It's just considering the use of a Rex and the versatility that it offers, I'm having to put that creature high on the list. It's just simply that has a point of higher status. But the Spino has a lot going for it as well. Admittedly, having a lower health stat though, it does boast even more damage than the Rex and a hell of a lot more mobility. On top of that, it is actually a pretty good underwater swimmer as well. Not obviously the best out there, but you could do the Moda with some Spinos if you wanted, and obviously if you're doing that on Gen 1 you'd be getting X Spinos anyway, so there is a boosted variant. They can also, when on land, get on their hind legs and deal even more damage. They can turn 360 on the spot, which a Rex can't do, which makes them invaluable for PvP potential. But you know, still, a boss fight's not PvP, but it can still be applied to any given combat scenario. It's just that is mainly used in PvP, and it's where the Rexes lack in PvP. It's why they don't actually get used all too much, because their ability is frankly quite rubbish, and if the thing that they're attacking isn't exactly in front of them, then there's a tendency that they'll miss, and they tend to be quite easy to kill off that way. But yes, the Spino is at number 5. Let's continue on. This might be an unpopular opinion, considering I'm going to give it away that the Rex is at number 3, but at number 4 I'm putting the Aloe, because I find it is a really great boss creature. Not only is it small and very agile, it also does boast the pack buff on top of it, and the bleed ability too. They really are great little fighters, and they're not the hardest to tame. You can even tame it 3 in one go if you build a big enough trap. Simply lure all of them in, and then boom, there you go. Once you've knocked them out and you've fed them, you've got 3 aloes, and a good 5 or so, maybe 10 if you are doing some of the alpha boss fights, will be enough for all of them on the island. I'm talking about here because I'm mainly generalizing to that map, because they really are very effective fighters. You could probably still do it with 5 as long as their health is high enough. That's the only thing they're really lacking compared to something like a Rex, because they'll probably be dealing more damage, and they are far more agile and just generally more convenient, especially actually if you're doing the oversteer. I find, although I don't really typically use them for that boss fight, as it is a little bit too long, and I find quite a lot of the allos do tend to die, especially considering even the Rexes tend to die and their health is quite a bit higher than something on the allo. But I guess maybe if you brought enough you could do it. I haven't really done it all too much. I've done it once or twice, but that was on Gamma. I've never done the Alpha Overseer with allos. I've only ever done it with Rexes, and then obviously a UT, because you've got to bring the UT in. It's not on this list because I don't really use it all too much as a general boss fighter, but I did give it a mention, as it definitely still can fight, I guess. I've given it 2 mentions now. But yes, the allo really does deserve to be on this list. If you've never used one before for a boss fighting scenario, take yourself a pack of maybe 5 and do one of the Gamma ones or a beta. Actually, they could probably even smash through that with absolute ease. Maybe don't try the alphas until you've got at least 10 of these things, and you're going to have a really great time. You're not going to regret taming one at all. At number 3, like I said, we have got the Rex, and I have to put this thing here. Come on, it boasts a lot of health. It has a lot of damage up its sleeve, and although it's not the most mobile, it really is the foundation of what is a great boss creature, and people use these things all over the place. They really are a go-to. If you never can figure out what creature you're going to use for a boss fight, the Rex is probably the answer that you've been looking for. It really does make sense. It is a big carnivore that is going to just generally pack a lot of punch in the damage department and be quite defensive in the aspect of its health is quite good, and that is where it stands apart from a lot of the other carnivores, because its health is a lot higher, which makes it ideal for boss scenarios. Yes, you're going to want to deal loads of damage quickly, but you're also going to want to have enough health to withstand it, and again, that's where creatures like sometimes the Spino and the Allo tend to fall a little bit behind, and some of the other creatures that I talked about much earlier on the list, which is why they're further back. The Rex is just the foundation of it all, and it deserves to be here. It is the OG. It deserves a respect that, you know, it actually doesn't tend to get quite as much nowadays, just considering how easy to tame people have them all over the place, but they really can do a lot, especially if you get some mutated ones on top of it as well, some health and damage mutations. Don't underestimate these things in a given boss fighting scenario, because they will pack a punch and they're very much worth it. In number 2, we have got the Shadow Mane, and come on, when looking at this creature, you can probably tell why it is such a great boss tame. Yes, maybe it doesn't have quite the level of health as a Rex, but considering its insanely high mobility, its pack buff, its hydration buff, and the fact that it can just deal tons of damage, and you can get loads of these things relatively easily, especially once you've got your first pair, because the tame method is actually quite awkward. So maybe it's not the easiest from the get-go, but once you've got a good high-level male and female, breed those things up and you're going to have yourself an absolute army of Shadow Manes, especially if you get some mutations on top of it as well. They are the second best boss creatures that I can think of for any given boss fight, apart from obviously the extinction bosses. Just use Gigas or Carchondosauruses for that, because they're in a sort of different league. You can even use these things for the Moda if you want, as they are very nice at swimming underwater and actually just underwater boss fights, of which there are only one of. I've done all of the variants of the Moda, Gamma, Beta and Alpha with this thing, and it did actually work pretty well. If you haven't done that before, again, give that a try. At number 1, we have got the Deinonychus, and this always tops my list for the best boss creatures. Some people just say, well, they're really feeble in the health department, you can just kill them off really quickly. Obviously, don't use these things for the extinction bosses, they will not last, but for everything else, also apart from the Moda actually as well, they are the ideal, because they deal bleed damage to bosses as they can grapple onto them and just tear them to absolute shreds. I find they are just so effective, so mobile, so useful. They also have the pack buff as well, like the Shadowbane, and yes, maybe it's only really as effective for one less boss than the Shadowman, so you'd be like, well, the Shadowman has to be better, but I find it is more effective for all those other bosses than the Shadowman, which is why I have to put it in at number 1. It is the king of boss fights for me. Yes, some people think differently. Some people like Allos must be in the number 1 spot. Some people like Rexes must be in the number 1 spot. Some people would say Shadowman should be in the number 1 spot, or Gigas or Carchondosauruses for the Extinction boss fights, and they're just their sheer power. But the Deinonychus always deserves to be in the #1 spot for me, and I'm pretty sure my opinion will never change unless like the Deinonychus 2.0 comes out and it absolutely changes my perception of what the Deinonychus is, and I'm like, well, this new creature is just miles and miles better. But I still have not found that. Ever since Valkyrie was released, I've been using these things for my boss fights and pretty much nothing else. End of. But anyway, that is the end of today's video. I really hope that you've enjoyed, as I've definitely enjoyed making this one. As always, comment down below what is your favourite boss fighter, and if you didn't agree with this list, put your 10 in the comments below, and I'll see you all later.